As the involute form no longer falls within the tolerance band discussed earlier. This gear should be replaced because noise and fatigue fractures may occur. Notice that the pit craters are much larger and deeper than in moderate pitting. This kind of destructive pitting can cause very serious problems. You've just seen in destructive pitting one example of the kind of distress sign that means the gear should be replaced. Let's pause for a moment and review the factors to consider when deciding whether to replace a certain gear or reinstall the old one. The first thing to think about is how much longer the transmission is expected to be in service. The second factor is the kind of service. For example, in a transmission that is expected to give 500,000 miles of service, you find moderate pitting of the main drive gear at 300,000 miles. If there is not a noise complaint and the transmission is going back into the same operation, there should be no reason to replace the gear. On the other hand, rougher driving conditions may increase wear. If a transmission previously driven under moderate highway conditions is going to be rebuilt and installed in a truck operating under more severe conditions, then gears that are already showing signs of advanced stages of distress cannot be expected to wear at the same rate as in the past. Another factor is noise. If a noise complaint has been traced to a particular gear set, the noise may be a sign of future trouble. The entire gear set should be replaced, regardless of its appearance. Finally, if you don't know the past history of the transmission, its application, any previous noise complaints, its expected life, then questionable gears should be replaced. We've looked at examples of minor and progressive forms of gear tooth surface distress, problems that may not require replacing the gears. Now let's examine the kinds of trouble that always require replacement, replacing not just the single distressed gear, but the gears it mates with as well. This is spalling. Extreme overloading for a short period of time can cause these craters, which are similar to destructive pitting, except that the pits are wider and shallower. This gear and its mates should all be replaced. Scoring, as shown here, is caused by high-temperature metal-to-metal contact resulting from insufficient oil film between mating teeth. The extreme heat causes an alternate welding and tearing of metal, which is rapidly worn away from the tooth surface. Replace. Burning is another problem resulting from extremely high operating temperatures. When inspecting a transmission with a burned headset like this, it's not unusual to find the main drive gear badly scored, with only slight visible damage to the mating gears. This difference in wear occurs because the teeth of the main drive gear make contact almost 3 times as often as the teeth of the mating countershaft gears. When replacing a burned main drive gear, also replace the mating gears even if there is no visible damage. Finally, there are 3 types of fractures that always require replacement. When a gear tooth breaks out, not only will that gear fail, but loose pieces of metal can cause further serious damage to other parts of the transmission. The 3 types of gear tooth fractures are impact fractures, fatigue fractures, and stringers, or gas pockets. Here you see an impact fracture caused either by a shock load or by a foreign object passing through the gear mesh. An impact fracture can be identified by a bump on the compression side of the fractured area. The more cycles the gear has run after the fracture, the smaller the bump will be. In addition to the gear which has a tooth fracture, the other 2 gears of that set should also be replaced, even though they may look undamaged. All gearing should be inspected for possible damage caused by the broken tooth running through the transmission. Fatigue fractures like these are caused by extremely high stresses on a gear tooth over a period of time. Fatigue fractures are identified by beach marks on the fractured area. These marks are made as the tooth progressively cracks under a load heavy enough to enlarge the crack, but not great enough to break off the entire tooth at one time. Finally, stringers or gas pockets are the result of undetectable flaws or weak points in the metal the gear was made from. These fractures can be identified by the differences in fracture shape and metal texture in the brake surface. Again, as with other fractures, it's very important to inspect all gearing in the transmission for possible damage caused by loose particles of metal. You've seen examples of the major kinds of spur gear wear problems that you're likely to encounter in a normal transmission teardown and rebuild. Remember that these wear or distress signs are typical, but they may not always appear at the same time in the life of a transmission. For example, frosting, a normal occurrence during break-in of a new unit, may be found occasionally at high mileage. No failure will occur, and as the gears continue to readjust to one another, the distress is likely to heal over. The more severe examples can occur at any time when a transmission is operated under adverse conditions or is subject to abuse. We've tried to help you diagnose common spur gear problems. Your mechanical skills, along with the information in this program, will help you determine what caused a specific gear tooth condition and whether that gear should be replaced.